Thank you.
The first question goes to Michael Birnbaum with the Washington Post.
Thanks very much. Michael Birnbaum, Washington Post. Secretary Blinken, President Zelensky in the last few days has signaled some openness to abandoning Ukraine's effort to regain all of its territory by force in exchange for NATO membership. I wanted to ask what you thought about that strategy, if you thought that was a good idea, and particularly if you thought it was realistic, given that President Trump is about to come into office. And second, a question on South Korea and President Yoon. And maybe some of us in the press corps were with you in March at the Summit for Democracy in Seoul. Was it a mistake in retrospect to host a democracy summit in South Korea? And are you concerned that Kim Jong-un is going to use this moment of instability in South Korea and transition in the White House to stage a provocation? Thanks a lot.
Great. Thanks, Michael. So with regard to Ukraine, the most important foundational proposition is this: Ukraine and Ukrainians will decide their future. Any decisions that are made about how Ukraine engages the Russian aggression, where it wants to go, what it wants to do, these are decisions for Ukraine and its democratically elected leadership to make. And so from day one, we've repeated and we adhere to the mantra of nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Well, Ukraine has to make these decisions. I think what we're working to do in the time that we have left is to give Ukraine, to give our own country, to give all the allies and partners that support Ukraine the strongest possible hand to use next year and beyond. If Ukraine determines that it needs to continue the fight, we want to make sure it has what it needs to continue that fight: the money, the munitions, the mobilized forces. If it chooses to engage in a negotiation, and that assumes, of course, that Putin and Russia have any intent of doing that, then, again, we want to make sure it's from a position of strength. And from my perspective, I think what I'm trying to do, not just with Ukraine, but across the board, is to give the incoming administration the strongest hand to play in all of these areas, and to pass the baton in a way that they can hit the ground running, because the world doesn't stop just because we have a political transition underway in the United States. So that's what we're focused on. That's what I'm focused on in the remaining time. When it comes to South Korea, let me just say this. We're obviously watching the developments very closely. This is one of our closest partners and allies around the world. We welcome President Yoon's statement withdrawing the martial law order, and there was a unanimous vote in the National Assembly to reject the decision, and he followed up on that. In our judgment, any political disagreements need to be resolved peacefully and in accordance with the rule of law. Korea has been an extraordinary story, an extraordinary success story over the last 3 or 4 decades. And the story that it tells of building the strong democracy, and one, again, where we see the institutions functioning as they should, is one that we thought was important to amplify and to show. And of course, with Korea wanting to take on the Summit for Democracy, we were delighted at that, and we had a very successful summit. But again, I think Korea is one of the most powerful stories in the world about the emergence of democracy and democratic resilience. And we'll continue to look to Korea to set that example.
For the next question, Ciaran Sunderland with DPA.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Secretary of State. Ciaran Sunderland for the German press agency. My question is about Syria. Does the United States believe that Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine has distracted him or weakened his support for Syrian President Assad in view of the renewed fighting?
Thank you. Look, I think what we've just seen in Syria with the offensive by HTS reflects the fact that Assad's key backers, key allies, whether it's Russia, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's Iran, have all, in different ways, been distracted, notably by problems of their own making. And it looks like HTS took advantage of that fact. Right now, I think what's so critical is that we see de-escalation. We ensure that civilians are protected throughout Syria, and maybe most critically, that there's actually a political process that moves forward on the basis of the UN Security Council resolution to try to resolve and end the civil war in Syria. If anything, the fact that Assad has refused to engage in any meaningful way on a political process is also what opened the door to this attack and to the gains that HTS has made on the ground. We have enduring interests, enduring security interests in Syria, particularly the interest in making sure that ISIS doesn't resurrect and doesn't come back. There was a tremendous success by the Obama administration and then completed by the first Trump administration to end the so-called geographic caliphate that had been established, all of the ground and the almost physical state that had been established. It's profoundly interesting to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so our own engagement and presence remains important. Partners who are working to make sure that, again, we don't see a resurrection of an extremist caliphate, a jihadist caliphate. That remains vital. We also have in Syria many foreign terrorist fighters, as well as their families who are in camps. We've been working very hard to see them repatriated to their countries of origin, but there are many thousands who remain, and we certainly don't want to see the foreign terrorist fighters reemerge. So we have an enduring interest here. We're looking at what we can do to continue to shore up that interest, but in the first instance, de-escalation, protect civilians, and then if Assad has any sense for his own, for the future of the country, actually engaging in a political process to end the civil war.
Leon Verneau with AFP.
Thank you for doing this. I'm going to break tradition. I will only ask one question.
I'm sure it's going to be a good one.
I hope so. I hope so. To stay in the region, Lebanon. Now, I'm simple-minded, but for me, a ceasefire is what it means, no fire. It's a ceasefire. Well, there have been several incidents since the ceasefire was concluded November 27th from both sides. Do you consider that Israel is or has violated the ceasefire that was concluded last week? And is the mechanism that you had set up actually already set up? And then I wanted to ask you on your reaction, your thoughts on a comment by the Israeli defense minister, who said, threatened that Israel would be ready to go deeper into Lebanon and would also not make the distinction anymore between Hezbollah and the Lebanese state. Thank you very much.
So first, the ceasefire itself was the product of intense and sustained diplomacy to get it. But any ceasefire, if it's going to be upheld, needs to have something in place to verify it, to deal with any concerns or allegations of violations of the ceasefire. That's what's so important about what we were able to set up, working with France. We have an oversight mechanism. If there are concerns that one party or the other is violating the ceasefire, it comes to us, and one way or another, we engage the parties. That's exactly what's happened. The ceasefire is holding, and we're using the mechanism that was established when any concerns have arisen about any alleged or purported violations. I think fundamentally, both parties, that is to say Israel and Hezbollah through the Lebanese government, wanted and continue to want the ceasefire. The interest that Israel has in making sure that its people can return home to the north, where some 70,000 have been forced to flee their homes since Hezbollah has been lobbing rockets and missiles into Israel virtually every day since October 7th, is real. The ceasefire and making sure that that's sustained